She stood alone before the dragon, the night humanity refused to kneel. She stood alone on the blackened stone plain while the sky burned red above the ruined horizon, and the wind carried us like snow across the bones of fallen cities. The dragon rose from the crater of fire not as a beast of legend, but as a living judgment whose wings eclipsed the stars and whose shadow crushed hope beneath its vast shape. Armies had fled long before this hour, and banners lay torn and forgotten, because no war, no fleet, no ancient weapon had slowed the advance of that eternal flame. She was human and small and unarmed, and every step she took forward echoed like a challenge against the thunder of the dragon's breathing. The dragon spoke with a voice that cracked mountains, and demanded kneeling, demanded tribute, demanded the end of defiance from the species that dared to endure. She did not kneel, and the ground did not swallow her, and the sky did not fall, and in that silence something older than fear awakened. She remembered the long nights of rebuilding after every fall, and the hands that lifted strangers, and the songs sung in shelters while the world burned above. The dragon laughed and flame poured from its jaws, turning stone into glass, and yet she stood with her coat whipping behind her like a banner of refusal. She raised no sword and carried no crown, and still the memory of billions stood with her unseen, unbowed, unbroken. The dragon asked why a single human would stand when empires had failed, and she answered that humanity did not measure itself by victory alone. She said humanity measured itself by the choice to stand when standing seemed impossible, and by the promise to protect even when hope felt like a myth. The dragon struck the ground, and the shockwave tore the plain, but she planted her feet and felt the strength of every ancestor who had ever endured. She spoke of nights when the cold took children, and days when hunger hollowed cities, and still people shared the last light they had. She spoke of firestorms and plagues and wars that scarred history, and yet every time humanity rose with hands scarred but open. The dragon listened, though it did not know why, because no creature had spoken to it like this since the first stars cooled. She said humanity learned to walk through fire not because it loved pain, but because it loved tomorrow. The dragon lowered its massive head, and its eyes burned like sun searching for the lie that should have been there. She took another step closer and felt the heat peel the air from her lungs, yet she did not turn away. She told the dragon that kneeling would mean forgetting every lesson carved into human bones across the ages. She told it that survival without dignity was not survival at all, but a slower kind of extinction. The dragon roared, and the sound shattered distant peaks, but still she stood, and the roar did not move her. She felt fear clawing inside her chest, but she held it like a tool, not a master. She said humanity refused to kneel because kneeling had never saved it before. The dragon recoiled as if struck not by weapon but by truth, and its wings trembled against the burning sky. It remembered worlds that bowed and faded and species that worshipped and vanished into silence. She lifted her chin and said humanity would rather stand and burn than live on its knees in borrowed macy. The dragon circled her, and each step shook the world, and yet the space around her felt impossibly still. She felt the eyes of history upon her, and the quiet courage of those who had never been remembered. The dragon asked what humanity would offer in exchange for mercy, and she answered nothing but coexistence. She said humanity would share the stars, not surrender them, and would meet power with resolve, not worship. The dragon paused, and the flames dimmed, and the sky shifted from red to dark ember. It asked what made humans believe they deserved to stand among forces older than their sun. She answered that deserving had nothing to do with it, and that existence itself was a claim. She said humanity existed and endured, and that was reason enough to stand. The dragon saw cities rebuilt from ash and ships launched from scrap, and children laughing beneath ruined skies. It saw humans reaching into the void not to conquer but to understand and connect. The dragon felt something it had not felt in millennia, which was uncertainty. She felt the heat ease and knew the moment balance on a fragile edge. She said humanity refused to kneel not out of arrogance, but out of responsibility to every future not yet born. The dragon folded its wings, and the world seemed to breathe again. It lowered its head until its blazing eyes met her steady gaze. It said that standing carried a price, and she said humanity had always paid in full. The dragon declared that this night will be remembered as the night humanity chose its fate. She answered that humanity had always chosen even when the choice was suffering. The dragon stepped back, and the fires receded, and the sky cleared inch by inch. Ash fell like quiet snow, and the wind softened as if the world itself listened. The dragon spoke a final time, saying it would not rule those who could not be broken. It said the stars would watch humanity and judge it by its deeds, not its words. She bowed her head not in submission but in respect, and the dragon returned the gesture. When the dragon rose and vanished into the clouds, the silence left behind was vast and trembling. She stood alone again, but the world felt changed as if a door had opened. Across hidden shelters and distant ships, sensors calmed and flames died. Humanity did not cheer because this was not victory but something deeper. It was proof that standing mattered even when alone. She turned and walked back toward the horizon, carrying no trophy, only the weight of the moment. Behind her the stone plain cooled, and life would one day return. The night would be told and retold, not as a legend of dragons, but as a memory of choice. Humanity would remember that it did not kneel, and in that refusal found its future.